Okay, so let's start off by looking at some of the high-level architecture, focusing again on V3. So let's head over to the website, jenkinsx.io. Let's go and look at our V3 docs. Once we get to GA, these will become the main docs, so you won't have to navigate to V3 there. Okay, so we've covered Jenkins X. Let's have a look at the architecture. We've got a lot of lessons learned from V2. I think the main area that we can, lesson that we learned was the world is constantly changing. There's a explosion of innovation that's happening, especially in the container-based world, but also with the adoption and growing adoption of CI/CD, there is a more rate of change, which is what we want. But I think one of the lessons we learned was how to handle that change. So not only for the Jenkins X project itself, maybe there's a new version of say Helm, or there's a better way of doing something, or a new tool. We need to be able to pull that into Jenkins X and reuse those and use those capabilities, whilst also installing guardrails so that users, consumers of Jenkins X, bring in these changes in when they want to in a reliable way. So with that, we have we've got the same experience with as Jenkins X2, but V3 is effectively a rewrite that we have of a number of the plugins and the charts that we've actually got. And you can see here from this diagram where we're really trying to isolate different areas to have clearer lines of responsibility to help with that management and maintenance of the project itself. So at the top here, we've got the experience of Jenkins X. Now, for developers, now there are CLI-based UX that we have, which we are familiar with. Originally, for V2, this was the JX CLI was all in one repo. That wasn't great, so even just the maintenance of that repository was quite difficult. So we've taken this more microservices approach where we have these plugins, CLI plugins that are wrapped around for the JX CLI, and these can be extended as well. So these will grow, these can be customized as well for your own benefit. But each different plugin has a clear responsibility. For example, we've got previews. This is for creating preview environments, and again, it's a lot easier to be able to maintain these repos. Again, similar to project as well. All of these actually different plugin microservice style repos. Now, of course, then the developer experience, more and more developers are getting more familiar with working with, say, chatbots on pull request, for example. GitHub Action market has really increased as well, and there's lots of bot markets. So developers really getting familiar with interacting with bots on using Git provider interfaces as well, like GitHub. We've also got the more UI-based interaction as well. So we have an Octant UI. Octant, if we go here, open source project coming from VMware folks. It's really highly extensible. It's really, really great. It uses UNR back when connecting to a cluster. So we've extended this and added in some plugins for Jenkins X as well. So that's also something to look at too. Again, these are all modular, so it's a lot easier to be able to maintain and build out these and extend as well. For the cluster itself, we've got some, as you will be familiar with Tekton and cloud native pipeline executions for orchestrating your pipelines. V3 has actually taken the approach of deprecating an abstraction layer that we had. It was actually a leaky abstraction for pipeline syntax that we layered on top of Tekton. For now, we are using just vanilla Tekton pipeline runs and syntaxes as well. So Tekton resources are actually used directly. We've got Lighthouse for handling webhook triggers, enabling some of the more ChatOps commands as well. We've got a Git operator, which is super interesting because one of the downfalls of V2 that we were doing was there was a lot of client-side setup. Instead, we've moved this into the cluster so that when we handle our GitOps installation and when we add in new applications or configurations for the cluster via Git, it's the Git operator that syncs those changes from outside the cluster into the cluster. So it's a lot more declarative and it's a lot cleaner for traceability and disaster recovery as well. So we'll dive into this during the guides as well. But this is one of the key areas too. there's a big emphasis on health. So there's an open source project called Cuba Healthy, which is another great way to be able to extend using your own custom checks for your own business logic. So we've done this for installation for Jenkins X, and when you're using Jenkins X, periodically these checks will run to ensure the health of Jenkins X. And you can also extend this to add in your own health checks as well in any language. So it's super. This is really very interesting and helps us on our journey, actually providing robust services and being able to be more reliant on your infrastructure and your installation. What's also cool is you can then tie Prometheus or other alerting solutions, Datadog and various other ones that look at Cuba Healthy, so you get alerting and reporting based on these health metrics too. We have this abstraction layer. Again, one of the lessons we had with Jenkins X2 was we blurred the lines. They were around what was responsible for what. Now, managing cloud infrastructure is not something Jenkins X wants to be involved in. It is something that other open source projects do very well, particularly Terraform by HashiCorp. So we've actually have support for the big 3 cloud providers here. We're going to be extending these to other cloud providers as well. But having this abstraction layer means we can actually, Terraform is responsible, again using Git, but responsible for managing that cloud infrastructure. On a similar way, because of the defaults around embracing GitOps for Jenkins X, we also needed a way to be able to manage secrets. You can't check in your secrets into Git, so instead we have placeholders used by these provided by Kubernetes external secrets, and then there's an extraction layer that actually then goes and gets the source of the real values of these secrets from Vault or external Vault or Google Secrets Manager or the similar one for different cloud providers. This a controller runs in cluster and actually takes the real secret values that is managed by these secrets providers and injects them into the cluster. So your state of your entire cluster is still managed by GitOps, but it doesn't contain the actual real Git secrets. So that's another abstraction layer that we have here. That's kind of super high level overview of the focuses around V3 for Jenkins X. These walkthroughs are going to go into different areas and hopefully you'll get a better idea. But as always, please ask questions. We'll be documenting more of these and diving into more particular areas over the coming weeks and months. Okay, so I think the next guide we're going to go on to is the administration guide and getting started actually setting up a cluster with Jenkins X3.